Welcome to the Speaker Meeting, a space where we break the silence one story at a time. Every episode, you'll hear from someone who's been there, through the struggle of addiction, the turning point into recovery, and the journey after. Because no matter where you are, you're not alone. Recovery is possible, and hope is real. My hope is that by sharing these stories, you'll believe it to be true. My name is Chibbi. My sobriety date is April 5th, 2024, and this is the Speaker Meeting. First of all, thank you so much for being here. Before we started, I asked you to pull a card, a tarot card, to kind of like help us ground ourselves a little bit, right? And to guide the conversation, not really in like a predictive way, but the energy and the spirit of the conversation. And the card that you pulled is the Strength card, which is a card that doesn't really speak to like loud, aggressive strength. It's more about quiet resilience, right? The work that happens in the shadows, the kind of strength that it takes to kind of like face yourself, to move through pain without losing softness. It's like a courage with compassion, right? A strength with surrender. Does this resonate with your experience at all, or what does strength look like for you today compared to what it used to mean?
I think it's so weird that that's the card that I pulled, because the way that you just worded strength describes exactly how I moved through my recovery journey from beginning to end. Mm-hmm. Like having that courage to admit vulnerability and that I'm not perfect, and that weakness is something that I can use as a strength. Mm-hmm. And, even getting into topics like turning toxic masculinity on its head.
Yeah.
Right? The things that I was taught as a young Latino growing up that I'm not supposed to be showing, that I'm not supposed to be doing, and just flipping that on its head and using kind of that to my advantage in a weird kind of way, like a big, middle finger to the system. So
to the machismo and the stereotypes.
When I saw that, I was like, no way.
Yes.
But it fits.
I'm telling you, this deck has been speaking in magical ways to me recently. So it makes perfect sense that it came out. So let's start at the beginning. What was your relationship to substances or addictive behaviors like in the beginning, and how did it evolve over time?
So for me, I always like to share that undiagnosed PTSD turned into addiction for me. I started having anxiety when I was a very young child. I was born into a very violent house. So the anxiety of what's going to happen today, specifically, like, is my mom going to be hurt today again? Just not knowing what's going to happen, anxiety. So it started with food. So when I was younger, let's say around the ages of like 5 even, I would overeat till I was just numbed, right? Till that there wasn't space anymore. I think around 13, it turned into purging. Okay. Those couple of seconds after I purge, I'll talk about myself, are in a way like very calming and numbing, and like I don't feel anything. Yeah. So that's something else that I ended up getting treatment for while sober, though. When I was 15, love addiction came into the picture. So I, got a computer in the mid-90s, got on AOL, 20 minutes for a picture to download. And I thought that I was going to go into those M for Men chat rooms and just find the attention and love that I was missing in my everyday life.
Yeah. ASL 21.
I was 16. You know what I mean? But substances started coming into the picture around 17, 18. Mm-hmm. And then when I turned 18 and I was old enough to go out to the clubs in South Florida, it was just, it was just an explosion.
All hell had broken loose.
Within 1 month, I had tried marijuana, cocaine, GHB. Was there another one in there? I don't know. Maybe I'll remember later. Ketamine. But like I tried all these different things. I didn't try that till later. Okay. So it was just not enough for me. Because again, I didn't know that I was walking around anxious.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that word existed.
Yeah.
To be honest, in the space that it did in my life, I didn't know that I had it, how it affected me, that it was a possibility. That time, I just thought that there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't enough, that I was insufficient, that I wasn't strong enough. Those scripts had already been written out for me.
It wasn't a word that was used to like describe people's feelings when you were growing up or anything like that. Like,
what do you mean?
Like you said, the anxiousness like was never like acknowledged. Like,
no, I mean, I always grew up with the belief that I was just supposed to be okay. And not only that, as an immigrant child, I'm supposed to be in gratitude every single day that I'm here in America living the life that my cousins are not getting to live.
Yeah.
So any hint of sadness, anything of being upset, any hint of ungratefulness is just met with automatic shame and guilt.
Yeah.
You should be shamed and you should feel guilty about having these negative feelings because we did this for you.
Yeah.
So I thought that was normal. I had no idea how things played out in developing the addiction that I got into. But after I got into recovery, all those dots, there's a thick line connecting everything.
Yeah.
So my journey with substances started with, through various paths until it ended. When I was 20, I was a victim of police brutality. So I think that my addiction went from already at 100% to extravagant amounts of attempting to trying to breathe. I looking back, I couldn't breathe anywhere I went. And then just, it was all downhill from there.
So a lot of it was like an escape of sorts from
I guess. I don't even know if it was an escape, more so of a being present. I thought I was being present. Like I just thought that I was able to just breathe. That comes up a lot for me when I talk about what it was like for me. I had issues breathing, issues in my chest from that, that trauma that was instilled in me from a very early age. And then the exacerbation of those feelings by having a traumatic event in my young adulthood. It's just like, I never felt easy, comfortable. I was always unsafe. So alcohol made me feel safe. It made me feel like I could just relax. But that was not what was really happening.
Yeah.
I don't know many relaxed alcoholics.
No, you're relaxed in that moment, but everything else is still there under the surface.
I was chaos. I was chaos. Yeah.
And so you said it started, like right at 18, a lot of alcohol, weed, all the other stuff. How did, where did it progress to, How did it end up progressing?
So immediately when I was 21, I moved to New York City right after that incident with the police department.
Okay.
And, I told myself at the time, I'm just getting away from this guy that doesn't love me, and I'll show him. But really, I was running away from that uneasy feeling that I had everywhere I went in South Florida. I tried crystal meth in New York. But by then I was already having physical withdrawal symptoms from alcoholism.
Okay.
So it was very early for me that I was completely physically dependent on alcohol. It wasn't even so much mental all the time.
Yeah.
My body needed the alcohol or else I would go through withdrawal symptoms, which are horrendous.
Yeah.
Horrendous. I would never... That's one of the reasons why I kind of stay sober. It's because I'd never want to go through that again.
Yeah.
So from an early addictive perspective, it was a long time of being the same level of, again, chaos. Chaos and alcohol abuse and sprinkle, cocaine here and there, GHB here and there. Weed all the time. But I never really got into anything harder than that.
Okay. Until the meth came along.
I tried it once, I didn't like it. I accidentally smoked it a second time.
Wait a second.
No one told me it was in there, but I suspected.
Oh, okay.
I'll be honest, I didn't have sex while I was high on crystal meth.
Okay.
Had I had sex on crystal meth, I'd probably be a meth addict. That's my theory.
I'm
sticking
it changes
to it.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sticking to it. The level of loneliness that I felt in combination with the stories I hear about crystal meth addiction, I think I was lucky. I was very lucky not to, experience that.
Talk a little bit more about that, because you're in New York City, right?
I'm in New York City.
The biggest, city in the country, the only city in the world, as the way New Yorkers think about it. And were you going out all the time?
Oh my God, every day. Yeah.
But this feeling of loneliness.
So feeling like I don't want to say it's imposter syndrome. Because I always feel like I've been very confident in who I am as a person, but it was more like I'm not enough. I'm not really lovable. It was those kinds of things that I was feeling on the inside. And in active addiction, I was not very dateable. And I'm just speaking for myself.
Yeah.
And I had a propensity to have an attraction for this level and quality of man. And they were dating each other. The men that I aspired to date, who I am today, right? Who I am today, weren't interested in someone with the level of unhealthy everything that I was bringing to the table. And, when you're drunk and meeting people and you're wasted, that's not a quality connection.
No, not at all.
You don't
a connection you're going to remember.
Or remember, right? Even though it lasted sometimes days. So it was just a lot of that. A lot of back and forth. It was a constant cycle of me like chasing after men who were emotionally unavailable, telling myself that I'm justified in feeling the way that I was from that rejection. So I was in a way using, that situation to keep my addiction going. Because, the biggest high that I could ever get is being right. Feeling like I'm right. If you're arguing with someone and you're right, that there is no better high. And I've tried a lot of things. So feeling like I was right about the negative things that I thought about myself and proving to myself over and over that these things are true about myself.
Yeah.
Just kept it going for a long time until it just started to break away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just started to break too much.
And so then was that breaking happening in New York still?
A second time. So I moved to New York almost 10 years after the fact. I lasted around 2 to 3 years the first time.
Okay.
Went back to Florida, and then I went back to New York at 29. To the same apartment, actually.
Back to the scene of the crime.
Back to the scene of the crime, and still in heavy, active alcoholism. But then the physical symptoms were just undeniable. I think even to the people around me.
Yeah.
That's when suicidal ideation started coming into the picture. I went to my first meeting around that time. So I was maybe 29, 30.
Okay.
Around that time. And it just, that's when I realized that something's not right. I mean, okay, so I had known something wasn't right for a while.
Yeah.
But I think that's when really I just didn't know what was going to happen anymore. I was scared.
Now, let's backtrack a little, because you said you were in New York for a minute and then you moved back to South Florida.
I did.
Was that trying to escape that lifestyle or for other reasons?
I didn't make it in New York.
Oh.
I didn't make it. I was wasting all my money on alcohol and substances and not having enough to pay the rent. So I had to put my tail between my legs and go back to mom's house for a little bit. And then, ended up staying with friends. And it was just one thing after it. It was the same thing, actually.
Yeah.
Not one thing after another. It was the same thing over and over again. Of getting jobs, losing jobs because of alcoholism, party.
Yeah. And so then would you say that like when you moved to New York, was that again trying to were you chasing the same dream you were the first time, or were you fleeing from the life in South Florida?
No. So I think going back to New York was trying to make amends for the first time.
Okay.
To myself. I couldn't do it the first time. Let me do it again now that I'm a little older, wiser.
Sure. Still a raging alcoholic.
Still a raging alcoholic, but things are going to be completely different, right?
Let me move back into the same apartment so that things can be completely different.
Yeah. So, yeah, it just didn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. I haven't seen it work in myself or other people. But I moved to San Antonio kind of in the middle of addiction, knowing that I needed somewhere different if I was really going to make it on my own. And it worked for me here. So sometimes removing yourself from a way of life, or maybe circumstances or even people, can work to someone's advantage if they have like the openness and willingness. And I've always been a very brave, I was raised to be very independent thinker. Like, you fly the coop, you do what you can, you dream your dreams. So when I was moving to New York, it really wasn't, didn't have family talking me against it.
Yeah. They were like, of course,
in a way.
go.
They're like, that's, they would give advice, warn me not to go, want me to stay, but it wasn't a forceful conversation. It was like, if that's what you're going to do, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But also, I'm not the kind of person you can really tell.
Even if they tried to stop you, it wasn't going to work.
It wasn't going to work.
So you said in New York is when you attended your first AA meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. What happened there?
I was living in Brooklyn. And a friend had mentioned another friend was in recovery, because I had started opening up to certain people about, hey, I think I have an issue.
Yeah.
The first conversation was a friend who I told that I wanted to kill myself. And that statement and conversations that stemmed from that topic led me to my first recovery meeting. Okay. And I went to a meeting at Pratt, because I was living in Brooklyn. I'm like, I'm kind of an artist. And I was like, let me go to Pratt. The only thing that I remember is thinking to myself, I can't believe I'm here, over and over again. I didn't absorb anything. And I think that's very common for someone's first meeting. The level of shock that you're in to be in a room, listening to, and looking kind of in a mirror, but not knowing it yet.
Yeah.
It's just a shock. That level of shock, I don't think is easily replicated in other scenarios. So I don't remember much, but I remember being there.
Did you go back?
No.
Okay.
I didn't go back. Okay. I wasn't ready.
Yeah. She wasn't ready.
I wasn't ready. Maybe I was, but I don't know.
So then, what was it? When you think back, what was the moment or series of moments that kind of made you decide, I really need to do something about this?
So after that second New York junction, I was back in Florida. I was experiencing very high levels of, again, physical withdrawal symptoms every time I would stop drinking for a couple of days, ruining relationships in my family, being a mess socially and publicly. Right now, I'm not exactly remembering what was the catalyst, but I ended up in an intensive outpatient program. Okay. 3 nights a week. Gosh, my memory escapes, right?
Yeah.
But being in that room for the first time and learning about the scientific data of addiction was what changed everything for me. Because up until then, I thought that it was a moral issue. I thought that I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
I don't want to get better. I am a piece of trash.
Yeah.
And now hearing that I'm sick and trauma has affected me this way. And of course, I'm going to react adversely to negative situations. And this is what the limbic, just like hearing all these things kind of gave me a yearning for not more at the time, because that wasn't the last time I got sober.
She still wasn't ready.
But that's what it was. It was learning that I wasn't a bad person, learning that I wasn't a piece of trash like I always thought I was.
Yeah. It's interesting because similarly, like when I started learning about addiction from like a cognitive behavioral kind of standpoint, that's when things really started to click for me, right? And that just goes to show that like there's so many different pathways to recovery, right? And what is that light bulb moment for one person doesn't mean it's going to be the same light bulb moment for another, right? You really kind of have to find your own way there.
Yeah, and recovery itself is not the same journey for other people. People have different ideas of what sobriety looks like. You know, abstinence for some people, total abstinence is what is correct sobriety. And I don't believe in that anymore, but I very much so once did.
Yeah.
And was very judgmental about it as well. And, but I'm no longer that. I think, you know, now that if smoking weed prevents you from using meth, then smoke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a possibility to be addicted to anything because we don't learn how to regulate our emotions or our bodies from an early age.
Yeah.
That's opportunities that are taken away, or not even taken away, they're never provided. But nor do our educators have that experience. So these are new concepts that are being developed now. And I am a very strong believer in not repeating generational curses. I come from a long line of alcoholism. I have it on both sides of the family. And again, when it comes to that toxic masculinity, like I hate to use this phrase, like, am I going to be a man about it? Or am I going to be a punk about it? So I turn that on its head. It's like, if I'm going to do this recovery thing, I'm going to fucking do it. Like,
all the way.
That no one can talk shit.
Yeah.
Right.
So
because I'll fight somebody.
For your recovery, as you should.
For my recovery.
As you should. So you said that first time in IOP, it didn't stick that time.
That time it didn't stick. It's not that it didn't stick. So the feeling of wanting to be better had not gone away, nor did it ever go away. But you don't really know until you know. You think you might be able to handle alcohol, and some people can. Those rare golden geese.
Yeah.
Right? That have an aha moment. And
I just smoked meth, and that was my problem.
I don't ever have to do it. No, but people can recover without the assistance of the groups, or they can just flip a switch, and that's it for them. So I didn't know that I wasn't able to do that on my own until I was not able to do that on my own.
Yeah. I mean, the book even says it in there where it's like, if you think you can handle it, go back out there, go to a bar,
do it,
see if you can have a drink, and abruptly stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were like, I'm going to try it.
And I did. A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then where was the next kind of turning point?
So the first bout of sobriety that I had, the first day I drank, I got a DUI. So I'm in jail now for the first time, living the story that I had heard in those meetings that I thought that I was immune to. And then I would make it, I made it 6 months. I made it 9 months. I made it maybe like 9 months again. I moved to San Antonio in the meantime.
Okay.
And then I went to treatment.
Inpatient. Yeah.
Inpatient for me was the sign that I needed that I didn't know what was best for me. That was how they say in the 12-step rooms, my third step, surrendering my will and my life to anybody that's not myself, or anything that's not myself.
Yeah.
That was the incident that really showed me that I just need help.
Yeah.
And I was willing to accept it.
There's something about, like an inpatient treatment center for whatever it is that you're going to that is so heavily stigmatized. But once you're there, like, it really is a kind of like gift to give you this free space and free time to just focus on yourself.
Right. I mean, it's 31 days of
plus
chaos, right? You're just getting sober. You're coming off of everything, including the thinking that you've been a victim to your entire life up until that point. So for some people it works. For some people it doesn't. I've known people that have gone to rehab
multiple times.
A dozen. I knew someone that went 15 times and they were just still not getting it. Very strong will that we all have, that strong will, but some people will never get it.
Yeah. So when you were an inpatient, you said you opened yourself up to the will and possibility of something outside of yourself.
I opened up to the fact that I needed help.
Okay.
And that I was willing to accept help and to learn more and to do more, take more action.
Okay.
And not, rest on my laurels, as they say, but like to do something about it. I'm going to have an active participation in my recovery now.
Okay.
I'm going to do what's suggested, and I'm just going to be sober.
And what did that look like?
It looked like codependency with 12-step programs.
Look, if it gets you to stop smoking meth,
Yeah. It looked like it was supposed to look very messy in the beginning, very emotional, very panic-ridden, very fear-ridden, very unstable, and then slowly progressing into confidence, normalcy. That's for me. That's what sobriety is supposed to look like. The journey, from beginning to end.
So when you got out of rehab, did you had already decided then, like, I'm going to be going to meetings, I'm going to get a sponsor, like, that was the route?
I was already involved in the 12-step fellowship when I went to rehab. I had already had a sponsor who fired me while I was in rehab because we had built such a close relationship at that point that he was personally invested in my recovery. And you can't, an important thing about sponsorship is that you have to be objective with the people that you're helping. If you care too much about them, then it's not really a good situation to be in, because then you become biased to the things that they can or cannot do, judgmental, resentful. It could just be a mess.
Too empathic even sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
You let yourself get entangled in their emotion. And it
happens a lot.
Yeah.
It happens a lot. Not that it's not good for sponsees and sponsors to grow close, because it is important. But there's a fine line. Sometimes a thick line, but when it's crossed over, it's crossed over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I learned, I sought someone else who suggested to me while in treatment. It was recommended that I also seek help in another 12-step fellowship called Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. Again, for that constant ritualistic chasing of emotionally unavailable people and adult children of alcoholics to retrain the way I thought about myself. Okay. So when I got out, I went to all three.
Okay.
And I sought a sponsor who helped me in all three, who was also in all three. I was very lucky.
Yeah.
I was very lucky.
Sounds like a unicorn.
Yeah, but aren't we all?
Oh.
We're all, yeah.
I think it's the nicest thing we've said about ourselves today. So you're going to meetings regularly. You have a sponsor. You're working the steps,
Heavily involved in extracurriculars.
Service work. All of that. And what did that give to you? Or how did that allow you to stay sober?
I was too busy.
Yeah.
And I started building these relationships that meant a lot to me. Right? It was a real camaraderie, fellowship, something that I really never had before, while being vulnerable in a space and talking about things that are really happening. So it was that, telling yourself that you deserve to be alone for such a long time and then not being alone.
Yeah.
But again, that also became an addiction.
Yeah.
Talk
more about that.
So meetings almost every single day of the week, only hanging out with other sober people, only doing things that are recovery related. So my life went from being revolved around alcohol and other substances. Now my life is completely about sobriety. So I'm, helping with conferences and volunteering to be of service positions at, next higher and higher level of taking on more responsibility and becoming like, I said one time in a forum online that I was like, I'm a pillar in the recovery community. And that was taken in a negative way. But I was more so talking about like the kind of work that I was willing in doing, not elevating myself higher than anybody else.
Sure.
Just meaning that I'm like an integral part of what's happening. Yeah. And I feel like that's important.
You're in there.
I was in there.
Yeah.
And then I started to realize that I don't want my life to be about being sober. I just want to be sober in order to have a life that I can be proud of.
Yeah.
And then that those rose-colored glasses, I think, started to come off for me when it came to, organized recovery programs. And specifically for me, the hard journey was the chokehold that religiosity and spirituality masked under the veil of control that has taken a hold of recovery. Like, recovery isn't easily accessible for people who are agnostic. That simply just don't believe. And I'm sorry, when you're getting sober, you don't really have the bandwidth to think about the creation of the universe. It's not there.
Yeah.
It's not there. We don't have time to worry about if God exists or not when we're newly sober. We don't have time to think about, what religion, it's just too much. It can be too much. And seeing people not come back because of that, and seeing people shunned because of that. And then me starting to get shunned because I'm voicing these opinions of like, hey, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we approaching this? Why is every conversation about this and not talking about actual work? I started working the steps in an agnostic way, taking away any references of anything being higher, being centered, and making everything tangible for me. So for me, like, when it comes to a power greater than myself, that just means simply not me. That means a doctor. That means medicine. That means an actual 12-step group. When it comes to surrendering my will and my life over to the care, it's just following that advice that stems from whatever it is. And that, I made it so simple that people were annoyed. You
started to ruffle some feathers.
Yeah, I started to ruffle feathers, but look, I had to.
Yeah. And I think it's important that you say that too. Like, I didn't start this to try and preach one path over another or say that this is the only way to do it, right? Quite the opposite. It's the idea that like everyone's path to recovery is entirely valid and your own. And whatever that looks like for you, if it works for you, it's great that it works for you, right? And
I must say this, I will send everyone there.
Yeah. I think 12-step programs do provide a lot to people, especially early in recovery, especially if they don't have anyone else around them.
Especially if they don't have insurance.
That part.
Especially if they don't have the means, if they don't have insurance. Yeah. It's free, it's everywhere, and it's the only thing that we can get. And it works. Yeah. It does work for a lot of people.
Yeah. So you started to step away from the kind of like formalized 12-step AA rooms or any 12-step, because you mentioned a few of them, right? 12-step programs. So what does recovery look like for you now?
So I officially separated from the 12-step fellowship a little over a year ago. Okay. I had very bad experiences, and I gave it a 3 strikes, you're out kind of situation and that's not how I was thinking about it before the 3rd strike. But when I got the 3rd strike, I was like, you know what? This is not for me. So, sorry, repeat your question.
What does recovery look like for you now? What does recovery look like for me? You're like, I'm going to go on this soapbox for just a moment.
Just a second. I live my life on a soapbox. Yeah. No. Recovery for me looks like being vulnerable still. And even though I don't participate, doesn't mean that those principles are not ingrained. Okay. Within my soul. Yeah. Right? I firmly believe that if you do not do anything about the way you're feeling, you're going to end up in the same situation. It's just a repetitive cycle. So I practice what I preach in those kinds of senses, right? Like I admit when I need help, I'm willing to go and get it. I've when I was 18 months sober, I went inpatient again, this time for trauma and mental health. When I was 3 to 4 years sober, I did the eating disorder intensive outpatient. I did another round of PTSD at around 4 years. And here I am at almost 7 years of continuous sobriety in a couple of weeks, thinking that I might need to dabble my feet into therapy more than I have been, because that's been cut off. Not cut off like something bad happened. It's just I fell off of it. Okay. Yeah. I became complacent in certain things. So here I am again wondering, do I need to step back not into meetings, but like into something, because I cannot be disconnected from the right way of doing things because I'll forget.
Yeah. Something outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah.
And so how do you keep moving forward through all of that?
I've learned so many things about myself. And one of the most important things that I learned was in treatment for the trauma was how to read my body.
Okay.
So I learned how to tell when I'm getting anxious. And that is, I think, the biggest gift that I've gotten as a sober person is I know when I'm not feeling okay, and I know how to do something about that.
Yeah.
And that's what gets me through day to day. And I've always been someone who's very headstrong, stubborn.
What's your sign?
Stubborn. I'm a Leo.
Oh, okay.
I'm a Leo.
For those of you listening to the podcast, I'm holding up the strength card, which is, a person hugging a lion.
Oh, really? No, because I didn't see the picture.
Yeah, the strength is always depicted with a lion and
oh my gosh,
a lion tamer of sorts, but taming the lion in a compassionate way.
I like being tamed sometimes, compassionately. Sobriety for me, one, is something that has been a gift, and completely unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very realistic about my recovery. I'm never going to pretend I don't want to drink again. And I know that I can drink whenever I want to. Mm-hmm. And that's what helps me when I'm out and about. I'm a very social person. I'm heavily involved in like intramural sports. I don't do well alone. That's the next part of the journey.
Yeah.
Is working on being okay when I'm alone and not relying on the attention that I get in social situations as a Leo,
Spotlight.
Right. I'm used to the spotlight. But being alone for me is scary. Mm-hmm. And it's scary. And I'm not going to say that it brings on cravings of wanting to use substances, because to be honest, I don't really get cravings like that anymore. Yeah. I'm around alcohol every single day. I go to bars. I go dancing all the time. I don't crave the buzz. I don't crave the withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I want to drink again? I do. Am I going to? I don't know. The fear that I have is losing the way that I feel about myself today.
Sure.
I'm not so scared of the effects of taking the drink. I don't think it'll affect me physically the way it has since I've done all that other work on my body and spirit at the same time, but I'm not willing to risk it because I don't feel disgusting taking my shirt off at a pool with other people anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose not needing the lights to be off and complete darkness when I'm being intimate with someone. Mm-hmm. I don't want to lose, the real confidence that I have and replace it with the fake confidence that I used to have when I was drinking.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to give up.
Yeah.
That's a lot to fuck losing my house, fuck losing my job. Those things can be easily replaced.
Yep.
Easily replaced. Friends can be easily replaced. I'm sorry to say that. But the way that I look at myself in the mirror and feel about myself in today, that's scary. Mm-hmm. That I don't know another fear like that presently. So I will not drink tonight.
Yeah.
I will not drink today.
It sounds like at the root of a lot of this is just an emotional intelligence, right? An emotional maturity that has become the kind of like foundation for everything else that you're growing on top of that.
I was so very lucky to land in the hands of a sponsor when I first came to San Antonio. And I looked at this man, an artist himself, in a way that I wanted to look at myself. I would hear him speak and the level of class, but the level of emotional intelligence, fairness, just. I was like, wow, I want to be that guy. And I asked him to be my sponsor. And I learned from him really how to value and honor myself as a person before anything else.
Yeah.
Before anything else, I've got to protect myself.
Yeah.
I've gotten in situations where I've had to. I have people cut off from family now that I have to protect my peace and learn how to deal with the pain.
Yeah.
But I'm a very strong believer in learning what emotional intelligence is and seeking it. And that's why I'm single.
and living the life.
Yeah, that's for another podcast.
For sure. Well, are you ready to get into some rapid fire questions?
Yes, we can do that.
All right. Fill in the blank. Recovery has given me
confidence.
What's one word you'd use to describe your recovery journey?
Shaky.
What's a daily habit or ritual that keeps you grounded?
Socializing.
If you find yourself struggling or triggered, what's the first thing you do?
Tell someone.
This or that, morning routine or night routine?
Night.
Meditation or movement?
Movement.
Talking it out or writing it down?
Talking it out.
Coffee or tea?
Tea now.
Now that you're outside the rooms of recovery.
I gave up coffee like 3 years ago because someone says it was keeping me anxious, and
they might be right.
They were.
They might be onto something.
Tea. Ginger.
Oh. Name one book, song, or movie that's been meaningful to your recovery.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm not thinking about it right now. So I have songs for steps.
Okay.
I have songs for steps, and Boys Don't Cry.
The movie?
No, the Boys Don't Cry.
The Cure,
remember? Yeah.
The Cure song.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boys Don't Cry is definitely one of the songs that I look to. There's another one that I can't remember right now, and I can't believe that, but COVID.
It's all right. These things happen. A piece of advice you return to when things get tough.
The quote.
The quote. All right. Let's pull it up.
So this was the one thing that I read that has always stuck with me. And it is from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous on Roman numeral 28. And it says, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Duh, right? The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. So I learned that restless is my body, discontented is my soul, and irritable is my mind. And I need to work on all three of those things.
Right.
In order to be okay.
I love that. So then what's one phrase or mantra that keeps you going?
Oh, one day at a time.
No.
One day at a time.
You can take the boy out of AA, but
you can't take the AA out of the boy. Yeah. One day at a time is definitely one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And if someone hears your story today and takes one thing away from it, what do you hope it is?
That they can do it. That they can do it. Yeah. Because I mean, everybody says this in the rooms, but if I was able to do it, you're able to do it is really truth in the pudding. Yeah. Because we all have our own traumatic journeys, and it really seems like we are not going to make it out of that. And a lot of us don't. We all get sober. Some of us do so upon losing our lives, right? But if some of us can do it, then it's available for other people as well.
For sure. Well, Andy, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate
your story. That's it for this episode of The Speaker Meeting, breaking the silence one story at a time. A huge thank you to our guests today for sharing their journey with us. Recovery isn't easy, but conversations like this remind us that we're not alone and that change is possible. If you're struggling, know that there is help and there is hope. You don't have to do this alone. For immediate support, you can reach out to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. It's free, confidential, and available 24/7. And if you'd like to share your own story, I'd love to hear from you. You can submit your information at geminisproductions.com/thespeakermeeting. And if this conversation meant something to you, help us spread the word. Subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. The more we talk about recovery, the more we remind people that they are not alone. Thank you for listening, and until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and remember, recovery is real.